Eventually, AI is going to be like the air that we breathe. It's going to be everywhere. One company invents artificial superintelligence. There's no reason that that company couldn't dominate every industry. Okay, I think about the job displacement thing like this. Is it a good idea to have all the jobs that we have today?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Makes You Wonder, where I, Oskar, have conversations about the future of human creativity in the age of AI with people from different perspectives on art, creativity, and technology. And today I am in a new recording studio, as you can see. Look at my beautiful fake banana tree back here. It is gorgeous. And I am on the countryside. And it proved a little challenging during the recording, but I think we got there. We'd love for you to follow along the show. So if you wouldn't mind hitting subscribe button wherever you are listening or watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and maybe even the like button. If I could so kindly ask you to do that, that would be fantastic. Or wherever you listen to your podcast, obviously you can follow us there. You can also pop over to find me on LinkedIn or X or Threads. And I am Oskar Strander on all those platforms. Say hi and would love to connect with everyone watching here, get your take on it, get your feedback, get your recommendations for maybe a guest that we can bring on. That'd be all lovely. Find all the links in the show notes of the episode. Okay. The guest today was a super sport and a great guy, Brian Snyder. Brian is a career creative technologist and a global president of digital at Axicom. He is based in Chicago, but has the whole world as his workspace and playground, I might say. And he has a long background from the communications industry that is so fascinating in this topic that we're talking about. Technology, artificial intelligence, and creativity all converge in this creative industry. So I love these conversations. We were slightly challenged by my Ohio farm Wi-Fi and some Chicago fire trucks, but perhaps it just adds to the charm of this podcast. At least I hope so. And despite our connections challenges, I really loved speaking to Brian. His background has really reminded me of my own. How he discovered technology through video games very early on in his youth and his childhood, built his own home PC just like I did. He started building a website just like I did. And I did the same things at the same time, but in a very different part of the world. So it was really, really fun to connect with Brian. And I found his view on technology incredibly insightful. And while we tried, we could not avoid talking AI in the future view. Throughout the entire episode, which I really loved, and some really inspiring takes on technology and creativity. We talked about AI regulation, work displacement, the techno-optimism, what art and creativity really means in this context, and how media is missing the biggest disruption and maybe the biggest point about AI and the disruption it's bringing on how we consume content and information in the future. Anyway, I had a great time, and if post-production helps us make this Wi-Fi situation work, I think you will love it too. Here is my conversation with Brian Snyder. Brian Snyder, very happy to have you on the show today. Welcome on board.
Thanks so much, Oskar.
Where does this podcast find you today? I know that you are in one place, but heading soon to a new. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So today I'm at my home office in East Lincoln Park, Chicago, Illinois, USA. And this weekend, my wife and I are moving to Phoenix, Arizona.
You and I talked yesterday about this, and I love the you going from one of the coldest places in the country, at least in the wintertime, to one of the very, very hottest. How are you going to feel on Monday? Are you prepared for this heat? What are we talking, 110? What's the average out in Phoenix right now?
Oh, I don't even know what the average is this week. I'm kind of hesitant to look. But it definitely gets up into the 120s, which is a lot. But I'm very excited to live in a place where my face won't hurt in the winter.
You're gonna be just fine. I think this is gonna be
I think so.
Throwing in on the deep end, temperature wise, and then adjusting from there. I think it's just great. Well, so happy to have you on the show. Brian, we just heard a bit of your background. We're going to dive into it. But first, I'm wondering, you used to work at Whirlpool, a brand that everyone knows. So we're going to talk a lot about AI today. But when do you think that we'll get AI to do our dishes and our laundry for us? We want
I mean,
the truth here, Brian. When is it coming?
the truth is, I think it's coming sooner than we think. I had an incredible 10-year run at Whirlpool to start my career after college. And part of that experience that I had was working on some very early smart appliances and other product innovations across Whirlpool's entire kitchen and laundry portfolio. One consumer insight that always came up in those laundry innovation sessions was we have washers and we have dryers, but we don't have folders. So fast forward from then to today, 20 years later. There's this company named Figure who worked with OpenAI to develop a humanoid robot that is capable of doing the dishes. And there's this amazing video of it on YouTube. It's easy to see a future where an AI-enabled robot like that Figure O1 doing the laundry, sorting the laundry, to loading the dishwasher, transferring it to the dryer, folding the laundry, even putting each piece of laundry back in your closet or your dresser. So I'm thinking about an autonomous robot that'll know when your laundry is piling up in your hamper and then go do the laundry and put it away without you even having to ask. So I think that the future is bright for laundry. And I'm sure that as we speak, there's someone at Whirlpool who's looking into it right now.
I'm so excited about that. I'm gonna go sign up for some sort of newsletter from Whirlpool to stay in touch on this. We need this. We need this a lot. So let's begin a little bit with your background. I'm so curious about, you are this creative technologist and you have a long career behind you, starting at Whirlpool and now head and vice president of digital over at Axicom. Tell us a little bit about the role of a creative technologist. It's been a role that I've encountered quite a lot throughout my career as well, in very different stages. The early days when I got started on the agency side, it was the people in the corner were talking about the age of mobile and social media, and blogs was still a big thing, but kind of past them. This is mid 2005, 6 or something like that, right? But what is a creative technologist now, and how is that changing? It feels like everything is changing faster and faster.
Yeah. I think of creativity not just in terms of campaign concepts or content production, but of course, those are both very creative and very important. To me, business creativity is also about creatively solving business problems using technology. And that's been my entire career. I started a little bit earlier than you. I feel like I got started in tech really when my dad took me to Sears to buy my first computer. And that first computer was a Packard Bell 286 with 2 megabytes of RAM and a 20 megabyte hard drive. This was not a beefy computer, even by the standards of the 90s. And they say that creativity thrives under constraint. So I had to be really clever in how I made the most out of that machine. Growing up, my dad would take me to computer shows where I'd use the money that I saved up from babysitting and mowing lawns to buy components for my computer. And then eventually I got to build my own computer. And it was around that time that this thing called the internet came around. And that really became my career. When I was in high school, I did websites for local businesses. In college, I worked on the first version of Notre Dame's website that was developed by the university's communications function instead of the academics from the computer science department. And then, like you said, I started my career as a developer at Whirlpool. And from there, got into website usability. I ran the websites for employees, for the company, and for the Whirlpool brand, including e-commerce. And then by reading and staying ahead of tech trends for marketing communications, I became that go-to person within Whirlpool that the executives would always look at and say, okay, there's some new emerging technology coming up. How are we going to use that to solve Marcom's challenges? Let's ask Brian. So that, in my mind, is what a creative technologist does. And that's what actually led me to social media, and became Whirlpool's first head of social. But I knew that I didn't want to spend my entire career at Whirlpool. I needed to learn other industries, and I thought that the best way to do that would be to join an agency. So I went to Golin and got to lead social media strategies and campaigns for brands like Nintendo and Walmart and McDonald's and Samsung and LinkedIn. And I stayed there at Golin for 10 years before following a friend and colleague, Matt Lackey from Golin, who went to Axicom to become the CEO. And I'm just loving this role now. We are at Axicom the Burson agency for tech brands and brands with a tech story. So it's really cool to be in this unique position as a boutique specialist in tech that's kind of within the network of the world's leading communications agency. So at Axicom, we're global. We've got offices from Stockholm to Sao Paulo to San Francisco. And being part of WPP gives us access to this ridiculously unrivaled technology stack in WPP Open. So there's this tool that we have now called WPP Creative Studio, which gives all 100,000 plus people who work at WPP access to basically the premium versions of every major generative AI platform, whether it's Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet or Google's Gemini Pro 1.5 or OpenAI's GPT. It's even got image generation from Stable Diffusion and Google alongside voice generation from 11 Labs. So you're right. AI really does seem to be the next forefront in communications technology. And one of the things that I've noticed is that so many of the people who seem to be the champion for artificial intelligence within comms functions, whether it's agency or in-house, we're the social media people. And
oh, really?
I think that's a really special thing. Yeah.
What do you think that is? That's an interesting take on it. I feel like AI could be put in
because I think it's
different places in an organization. But is that what you see? Is that the people that you feel are more successful or on understanding how to use AI, or is there anything else you have in mind there?
I think about the ways of adopting new technology for marketing communications. Whether it was the web back in the day or mobile, like you talked about, through social media and now with AI, it's that same skill set of how do we follow what's happening in the industry and provide counsel to clients and to colleagues around the latest developments in this area of technology, to being able to apply it to our work on a day-to-day basis. And I've been seeing a lot of people talk about things like a deployment plan that is crawl, walk, run, fly. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, it's 2011 all over. And we're looking at the same kind of adoption curve for AI that we saw within brands becoming social businesses.
Listen, we're going to get deep into AI. I wanted to talk about, your beginning. It feels like you have developed this passion, and I can just hear how you're talking about this, that there's a deep-rooted passion in technology. Also, for everyone listening, following Brian on LinkedIn is a hoot. I've only been doing that for a little while, but you're dropping some absolute bombs out there that I think are really provocative and really interesting to think about. So I want to get to that. But first, we want to get to know you a little bit. First of all, I think it's fascinating the way that you describe how you started working on computers, because it's very similar to what I did in the mid 90s when I grew up in Sweden, and the same thing there. We got a Hewlett Packard. It was basically a subsidized computer by the government, so everyone could have a home PC, a multimedia computer, and you got an Encarta CD-ROM, and it was the biggest thing in
yes,
my life.
I had Encarta.
Yeah, that was it. The whole world on a disc. That was what it felt like. It's kind of a joke now thinking about it, but really the precursor of what the internet could be, right? And it's like this amazing information, and that's where my love for this industry started. I also built websites for a long time, Photoshop, and all that thing was just self-taught, and so many of my friends did the same thing and went on in different directions. Do you feel like can you precise a moment where you developed this passion? Can you trace back one specific moment or experience that really ignited this passion for your work? Because I see it in your eyes. You're a person that likes your work a lot. and that's a beautiful thing.
I mean, it sounds so silly, but I have to say, my love of technology started with video games. I got a Nintendo, the original Nintendo, for my birthday when I was like 5 or 6, and um, really got into it. I was in the Nintendo World Championships of 1990.
What?
If you remember that movie, The Wizard. Yeah, I was
Yeah, yeah.
actually literally in the Nintendo World Championships, and fast forwarding from that to being able to run social media for Nintendo. I got to go to E3 in 2014 and lead Nintendo's social media efforts at that show. And it was just so incredible being able to meet my heroes like Mr. Miyamoto, who created Mario. Um, it kind of brought the whole thing full circle.
I couldn't believe it. If you were to tell me that I was 1990, I was 10. I don't know how old you were. I was 10. I also played
I
Nintendo.
was
I
10
got
in
passionate.
1992. You're
We are
looking better than me.
kindreds.
That must be clean living.
It's just a camera. Don't worry about it. It's also pixelated on your end, so you can't say that. um, I mean, if I was 10 and someone told me that I could go and do that with Nintendo, I wouldn't believe that was a thing. That's incredible. I also started with video games. I still play video games with my kids, and I find it incredibly fascinating to follow that journey into the future as well. It's a huge industry, obviously, and AI is going to do lots of interesting things there. I mean, this is so much fun. We have mirrored each other in many different ways. Uh, and speaking of topics, of the topic of passions, is there anything that you do before we head into all of this, Brian? Are there any creative outlets that you do outside of work that gives you energy and mental relaxation when you're not working? What do you do when you're not moving to Phoenix and working at Axicom?
Let's see. During COVID, I got really into cooking, and I haven't looked back. I really love the new generation of cooking creators on social media. Cooks like Olivia Tiedman on TikTok and Joshua Wiseman on YouTube. Josh does step by step instructional videos. I use it to learn a lot of techniques from him. Olivia, on the other hand, is just wildly creative, especially with her plating. But the
Oh,
difference between Josh and Olivia is that Olivia doesn't do step by step in her videos. You get to see her process, but she doesn't explain anything. She doesn't even tell you what the ingredients are. So I love watching Olivia's videos for inspiration and then trying to recreate her dishes myself and incorporating my
nice.
own ideas and techniques along the way. Um, and that kind of comes back to our other conversation, right? I think about the future of personal creativity that's enabled with AI. Um, I already use AI as kind of a creative sparring partner in my work and in my personal life. I workshop recipes with GPT 4.0 daily. And I think about that home robot, like the Figure One, that could help me with all of my least favorite kitchen tasks, like prepping mise en place and cleanup, and how that could free me up to spend my time on the creative parts of cooking that I enjoy. Um, a robot like that might even help me put more thought into plating, and I could try to get on Olivia's level.
Do you think that is a good way of explaining where kind of AI is now, or where we're using generative AI now to do the things that we maybe don't want to do as much, research, etc., to free up our creativity so we can mess with our hands and create the food, but maybe not sort or chop the onions?
I mean, if it gets us out of doing the menial tasks and freeing us up to do higher level tasks, whether that is in personal creativity or life in general or at work, that's where I think that AI has the biggest benefit to humanity. I think about AI for creative professionals like doing what the spreadsheet did for accountants. So back in the day, there used to be entire rooms full of people who were called bookkeepers. And they would have literal books where they would enter in transactions by hand, records of transactions. And that would be how a company did its accounting. And that entire room full of people is now a spreadsheet. Um, that doesn't mean that accounting went away. But accounting now is not about bookkeeping. Accounting now is about how to better manage finances for a company. It's more creative, it's more strategic, it's higher level, and I think that that's an opportunity that AI is going to bring to marketing communications, freeing us up from having to do the menial tasks so that we could focus more on the strategic and the creative tasks.
Uh, we talked about this the other day. I think there are great analogies to AI and how it's disrupting. Because I think, I mean, where we are now, Brian, I think you see the same thing. I think media loves to talking about AI, right? It's a bit of a hype in media just by sheer volume of conversation and discourse around it. Some people are calling it a bubble now, and it's just a commodity that's just gonna, where are the use cases, etc. I mean, we were promised of flying cars and robots to do our laundry, but here we are, just getting generative AI to write our copy for us. There's a lot of it in media, and you're quite vocal about AI and tech in the creative comms industry. I mean, what is really the state of AI right now, according to you? Where are we in the longer scheme of things? What inning are we in, or whatever analogy you want to use? You wrote a post we're going to get back to today about AGI, and yeah, where are we?
So early, so early. What's amazing is that we are both so early, but we're looking at an incredible transformation. That it's going to continue as it is with GPT 3 to 4 to what's been rumored in 5, all these different models, and each one of those gets closer to the place where we get to artificial general intelligence (AGI), like you mentioned. And that's going to be a moment when everything changes. Everything changes because once a computer can do work as well as a person, then a computer can build a computer that can do work better than a person, and that's where AGI quickly becomes ASI, or artificial superintelligence. And that's when there are so many things that we have yet to even contemplate around what does the future look like? What does the future of an economy look like if labor is no longer needed? What does post labor economics look like? How do we take care of each other? How do we take care of ourselves? What does it mean to contribute to the world? These are going to be some big questions. So I think it's going to be really interesting when you get technology and business, politics or regulation, and philosophy really all coming together.
That's where we are with AI right now. You're thinking we're super early. Think media is speaking about AI the same way that we have done with, I mean, all major technologies. This happens, right? We talk about new technologies and um, searching for use cases and proof that it's actually being adopted by the larger mass. We haven't seen any platform grow as fast as OpenAI's ChatGPT ever before. But now, the flashlights are turned on them to really decipher how we're applying this technology to great use cases. You have talked a little bit about this in the communications, and wrote a lot about it in the communications industry. I'm interested to hear your take on this. You wrote an article about the rumors of PR's death by AI have been greatly exaggerated, for instance. And you're quite vocal about how AI is a disruptor in many ways, and how you even see the role of human creativity in kind of the strategic thinking evolving in PR and communications. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what is your take on this applied in the wider communications industry right now, and how we're approaching AI for your clients and general business purposes?
Yeah. If you look at every agency, every marketing communications function, you've got a process that starts with determining what the brief is. What's the business problem that we're trying to solve? Doing some research around that. At Axicom, we have a process called the Axis, where you look at the audience, the brand, the culture, the technology, and you bring those things together to form the insights that then inform your communication, your marketing communications campaign, your big creative ideas, all the different tactics that come with that. And then you measure it at the end, right? After you execute the plan. Each one of these steps can be enabled with artificial intelligence. So you could use AI to take a brief from a client that might be 20 pages long and have 100 different questions in it, and use AI to do that job of distilling what's the real job to be done here. How do we distill these myriad asks into a single mission for this program or this campaign? You can use AI to do the research. Now, of course, AI hallucinates today, so you've always got to make sure that you're going back and then checking whatever research it gives you. But it's so great to be able to help getting over what I call that blank sheet of paper paralysis of like, I know I have to do something, but where do I get started? Ideation. I talked about it earlier. AI is a fantastic intellectual sparring partner, especially around creativity. So like, here's an idea, help me make this better. Here's something I wrote, help me make this better. Give me the counter arguments against this argument that I want to make. All the way through AI measurement. So we're looking at ways to supercharge every step of that process. But I don't think that replaces human intelligence and human creativity, and also human conscience. One of the things that I wrote about in the article that you mentioned was I believe that a role of communications within a company is to not only talk about how do we communicate to the public, but how do we listen to the public, and being able to serve as that advocate for whatever the public stakeholders are, whether they're customers, partners, employees, community members, and bring those perspectives to the boardroom so that the company can make a decision that is helpful to all of its stakeholders, not just its shareholders. So that's where I think that there's kind of a limit to what AI can do, because you need to have that humanity, that human empathy for these audiences to be able to represent them in a boardroom.
You also talked about how AI and technology is kind of disrupting marketing communications on the inside of companies, and that a lot of people, you said something that was super interesting to me, that a lot of people kind of missing the story there, that it's not only about the that it's more change on the consumer side than when we really realize. It's not really talked about that much. We tend to focus a lot on AI application right now. Last year was discoverability. What should we do with this? And maybe this year we're stepping into more of actually applying AI to different parts of our business. But you seem to think that there are more changes maybe happening on the consumer side that I tend to agree with. But it's not talked about as much because I don't think we've maybe envisioned that as much as what's right in front of us, really, with these use cases. Tell me about that, Brian.
Absolutely, Oskar. Everybody talks about what I call the inside out view of AI. How can AI supercharge all of those different pieces of a marketing communications process that we just talked about? But not as many people talk about the outside in view of the change that AI is going to create, and that is the change in consumer behavior. So you mentioned earlier about the explosive growth of ChatGPT. ChatGPT got to 100 million users in only 2 months. People were freaking out that TikTok got to 100 million users in like 9 months, that Uber got to 100 million users in like 72 months. But 2 months was all it took for generative AI to get to 100 million users. So the biggest change that I think about is that today, if you want to search for information, if you want to find something out, what do? You open your phone, you go to Google, you type in a query. Google gives you a list of blue links, some of them to news articles, some to them to websites. You look through the list of blue links, you tap on one of them, you go to the website, you read something. It might be great quality, it might be less than great quality. You might go out and look at 20 different websites to do the research into whatever you're trying to do. In an AI world, you ask a question and the AI answer engine, whether it's GPT, whether it's Microsoft Copilot, whether it's Perplexity, goes out and it does the research for you. It looks through the list of 10 blue links and brings together the best nuggets of knowledge to answer whatever question you had. and presents that back to you. So right now, from a marketing communications perspective, we're looking at that list of blue links and thinking, okay, how do I get into the right media outlets to reach the people that I'm talking to? How do I get on the right social platforms to go reach the people that I'm trying to talk to? Right now, those are the arbiters of brand reputation: the media, the influencers, the social media. In the future, if AI is adding a layer to that where you're not interfacing directly with the socials or with the influencers or with the media, but you're instead just interacting with your AI personal assistant, whether that is on your phone, in your car, in your home, part of your humanoid robot, on your face with an Apple Vision Pro. All of these places are now bringing the information to you. Autonomous AI agents going out there and finding information that might be interesting to you. In a world like that, as a communicator and a steward of brand reputation, you've got to be thinking less about how am I reaching people through these mediums of today, and more about how am I reaching people through the mediums of tomorrow. What am I doing with my brand to influence what the large language models, what the AI answer engines are saying about my brand? And I think this is the future of marketing communications. In a world where the website goes away and it becomes an API into an AI assistant, you've got to be thinking about how are you positioning your brand to appeal to those AI assistants so that they're saying the things about your brand that you want them to be saying about you, just like you would, 100 years ago, looking at public relations from the perspective of how do we influence journalists to say the things that we want them to say about the brands that we represent.
Right. That's a great analogy for it, right? The kind of the traditional PR way of influence becomes a way of, this is not about design. If my website is all of a sudden obsolete, I don't have to have a fancy front page and put all that work into it. It's really more about how I influence these agents that are working on behalf of consumers to find my products, to understand what I'm doing, to buy my services. So where does this leave us in terms of form factor, do you think, if you look at that? If websites are kind of obsolete, how is this what the Apple Vision Pro is going to need to really be, a big thing in the future? I believe in that as a new form factor, by the way. And like over time, I think we're stepping away from this screen obsession that we do have, going from a small screen to a mid-sized screen to a big screen at night on a normal day.
Yeah,
and we're
absolutely.
Interacting with information in a very personalized way through these agents to access everything that we need. What kind of form factor can we start thinking about here? What do you think about that? It's not a laptop anymore, is it? Or maybe it is.
I mean, oh god, can you hear that?
Yeah, is that do you live in a zoo?
I live on a busy street in Chicago, and there's never been a time when I'm giving an important presentation or an interview or something that doesn't involve an emergency vehicle going by. So, are you able to edit that out?
No, I think we're gonna keep it. I love this. This just gives it more of a reality. That's great. Yeah, sounded like a big elephant stepped into your room first. It's all good.
I have a tiny dog, not a giant elephant. So you were asking about form factors.
Yeah.
Is it going to be PCs? Yes, it's absolutely going to be PCs. AI PCs are going to take what is currently all done in the cloud and let you do it locally. So like right now, if I want to have a back and forth conversation with GPT-4o, that needs to have an always on internet connection. Because all of the processing happens in the cloud, and that happens because my phone doesn't have enough processing power on it to do it locally. But devices are going to continue to get more powerful. The AI PC is going to take some of this functionality that happens only in the cloud now and put it into the local machine so that you don't have to make the round trip to the network. if you're on a farm in Ohio, you don't have to worry about losing connectivity to your AI assistant. They'll always be on, they'll always be with you. And that also helps from a privacy perspective because anything that then is processed locally doesn't have to go and sit in the cloud where it could be potentially hacked by some nefarious actor. So I do think that it's going to be a rapid transition where you're going to see AI in absolutely everything in the coming years. But I think eventually, even that's all going to go away. That eventually AI is going to be like the air that we breathe. It's going to be everywhere. I could see a future where you've got an earbud that goes in your ear and is your always on AI assistant. And your AI assistant is aware of the context of where you are, what you're doing, who you're meeting with, where you're going, all these different things. And it's able to proactively give you tips, hints, direction for whatever situation you find yourself in. So I think that eventually AI makes it so that most user interfaces go away. You don't need to have a screen if you can just talk to it. There are some people, like you've probably heard about Elon Musk and the Neuralink implants. I mean, that's where you get to the time when we're going to have augmented humans, right?
Right.
This whole thing, AI starts with a window in a website. That's where ChatGPT started. And now we've got the place where we've got apps that you can speak back and forth. And then it's going to be embedded into, I mean, it's already embedded into everything. You're using AI every time that you watch Netflix because AI is recommending the shows to you. You're using AI every time that you open up Instagram because the algorithm is being powered by AI that tells you what you get to see. We experience so much AI today without thinking of it. And that's what's going to happen more in the future, is that AI is just going to be a part of everything.
So let's talk about, I mean, we're already talking about the future is. Let's just stay here, Brian. I love this.
That's what one of my favorite things about working at Axicom is we call ourselves futurists, not followers, that we're always looking at what's next. And being at a comms agency where everybody else is just as geeky as me and is constantly trying to one up each other on who's finding the latest technological breakthroughs to share with each other. I mean, every day it's like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, I love it. So what do you guys talk about when it comes to the darker sides of AI and the wrong turns that we hear, the alarm bells from various speakers out there in media as well, misuse of information, etc. How do we best navigate that as a society?
Sam Altman actually just wrote a really great op-ed today in the Washington Post where he talks about exactly that, about the need for a multinational consortium. I fully believe that this is not something that should be left to the private sector. Companies have profit motives, and they will use AI to get a competitive advantage. You need governments to be able to put some kind of regulation around it, and it's very hard unless all of the governments work together because it's a global world today. And if you don't like one administration or one set of regulations, you can just go somewhere else. So I do think that there's danger in that. The other piece where I see big danger is too few companies controlling too much of the AI technology. If one company invents artificial general intelligence, like we talked about earlier, or one company invents artificial super intelligence, there's no reason that that company couldn't dominate every industry. And if that company then dominates every industry, that then leads to a de facto corporatocracy where they run the world, whether they directly run the world or they're just so big and have so much influence that they might as well run the world. That's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. I'm less worried about the Terminator, and I'm more worried about the big companies. So I think that regulation is part of it. I also have a ton of heart for the open source community around artificial intelligence. I run the Llama model from Meta on my MacBook locally, and I encourage everybody to check that out. These tools are free. You can build tools and platforms yourself with low code and no code tools. So I see a place where AI really democratizes technology, a time when you don't have to be a coder to build an app. In fact, I think that we're coming to a time when software itself goes away, the way that we think about it today. If you want to write a letter today, you open up the Microsoft Word app and you maybe don't use 90% of the functionality, but you use that 10% to write your letter and print it or whatever you're going to do with it and send it. But I imagine a future where you have a task and the AI creates software on the fly to do whatever it is that you need to do.
But what about the real future about creativity? Not near term, but long term. What is your view with that? Because we can look at various big technological shifts in history in how we are evolving with that as humans. But is AI one of those things that is going to just become very, very fast as an implementation and do remove jobs quicker than other technological developments, you think? Or are we going to roll with it? Are we going to evolve as humans like we always have?
Okay, I think about the job displacement thing like this. Um, is it a good idea to have all the jobs that we have today? Should we have people that have to do terrible, boring, dangerous jobs? Would it be better for us as a society if we could eliminate some of those jobs and automate them and replace them with AI, with robots? I think about I don't even know if this is true or not, but I've used this story so many times in conversations with people. I remember reading once something that, at least I think I read it, that the toll booth operator was like voted the most depressing job in the world, and that toll booth operators had the highest rate of suicide of any profession. And I was like, God, that's so sad. And then I think about from then to now, you don't see many toll booth operators anymore. Almost all toll booths are operated. So, yes, did those toll booth operators lose their jobs? Sure. Is it probably good that people don't have to do a job that is that depressing? Yeah. So I look at this from an optimist perspective because I fully believe that AI is coming, that there is a huge amount of change coming with AI, and we don't know what's going to happen. It could be really good, it could be really bad. So I just choose to believe that it's going to be good. I choose to believe that we're going to get to a place as a society where we don't have to do jobs that we hate. We don't have to do menial labor. We don't have to do dangerous jobs. That robots can take those on, and that would let us elevate ourselves as a society to focus more on what can we do that requires humanity, that requires empathy, that requires those things, true creativity, things that you can't do with AI alone, things that require a person. So I see a future where if you've got a really great idea for a song, but you don't know how to play an instrument, you can still make that song because you can work with AI and figure out how to make it. If you have an image in your mind for a painting, you can put that to paper without ever having to pick up a brush. That's the kind of creativity that I see AI unleashing. And from a professional perspective, I think it's going to allow everyone in every kind of field to do better work. Whether you are a doctor or a lawyer or a janitor, your job is going to be made more pleasurable, more efficient, more effective through the application of technology. And that's going to let you either spend more time on contributing to the world. I always say if I didn't have to work, I would be doing something to try to make the world a better place. Um, and I fully believe that there's going to be more opportunities for more people to do that. Are there challenges to that? Yes. Is there going to have to be a lot of change along the way to support a world like that? Absolutely. But again, I choose to be an optimist as a futurist.
I love that view. It's nice to I have an optimistic view. What do you think about when we're describing these things of just being able to create things so seamlessly and content in abundance? Is there a downside to the human arts that there's something about the process of creating art and painting with a brush rather than telling a robot how to do it. Do you think about that?
I mean, again, that's where I think all of this goes back to being a philosophical question versus
Right.
a technology question. What is creativity? Is creativity the production of something? If I follow one of Joshua Wiseman's step by step instructions
Mm.
and I create a dish just like his, sure, I did all the cooking, but was that creative? Or was I just following rote instructions from someone else? Um, when I make my own dish and I come up with my own recipe, then I feel like I'm being creative. So,
Mm.
what part of that was the creativity? Was it
Mm.
the time when I invented the recipe, or was it the actual steps that I took to produce the food? That's the question. What is creativity? In my mind, again, trying to be an optimist around technology, I believe that the creativity is the idea, that the
Mm.
creativity is the creative thought that you had. If you're able to pull off a guitar solo like Trey Anastasio or Tim Reynolds, and you're able to just shred, that's awesome. In my mind, I can think of a great guitar solo, but I'm not a good enough guitarist to be at Trey's or Tim's level. Um, so, in the future, could AI help me write a song? Maybe. Would I feel creative from that? Absolutely.
I think about that a lot sometimes because he's always, sometimes you want to really appreciate good art. Always, and it many times comes down to who the artist was, their struggle and the creative flow. It's part of art in one way, but it's not everything. It's when you look at you know um, the movie industry and how we use CGI to really make up these incredible worlds. We don't really think about how that was crafted. It's really about losing ourselves in a story that is told to us and helping us imagine these things. So there are quite a few different aspects to art as I see it, and sometimes the story and how it was made actually does matter. In other times, in many other instances, it does not. So I just think it's an interesting aspect of the human creativity and how we're using technology, and how we also, as again back to consumers, right? How we are as consumers are are choosing what to consume and choosing what to
Mm-hmm.
follow and what to like, and it makes a difference of what is the role in your opinion. We talked about before how consumption will change. We're going to have everything at our fingertips. What will the role of brands really be in this future scenario?
I think that's a great question. I think that's an incredible question. Um, Already today, we've got a mediator for a lot of the shopping that we do. I don't know if you do as much Amazon shopping as I do, but I do most
Oh
of my
yeah,
shopping
there
on
are
Amazon.
boxes everywhere.
And so boxes every day is Christmas at our house. There's always a box coming for something. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's toilet paper, but there's always something. So I think about that, right? What is the role of a brand where Amazon is the mediator between me and the product? There's a lot of Amazon's called a lot of heat about using data about customer preferences to roll out its own products to compete with the brands that it sells, right? Um, what happens when that even goes further, where I'm not saying to Amazon, show me toilet paper, and I'm deciding between different toilet paper options. What if my AI agent is going out there and choosing my toilet paper for me? In that kind of case, do I care what the brand is? Because the AI is going to figure out the best cost, best quality, shipping when I need it, whatever it is. Um, I do think that's a really good question for what is the role of a brand in a world where consumer behavior is mediated through an AI agent. In the short term, I think brands become even more important because then you need, just like on Amazon, right? Today, if you go to Amazon and you say, give me toilet paper, and you just pick whatever Amazon gives you, you might end up with the Amazon brand or Scott's or whatever. But like, what if I'm really loyal to Charmin and I love Charmin? So I go in and I'm thinking about the brand before I go to Amazon. Same kind of thing. I think in the short term, at least, you still need brands. You still need to build brand love, loyalty, advocacy, because you need people more than ever to be able to have some intent when they go shopping to want to look for a brand.
Advertising will be quite important still. If you look at that world, for brands to be able to get out there and really influence people, not only through these agents and what content that show up and but really building some sort of preference through branding in whatever shape or form that will come with.
I think the evolution of advertising and paid media in an AI world is also fascinating. So, if one of my favorite examples of a company that's influenced AI well is a company called HubSpot that does a lot of marketing communications automation software, right? If you go to Microsoft Copilot today and you ask any question about social media marketing, there's a good chance that you're going to get a reference to the HubSpot blog in that response. Now, is HubSpot the end all be all font of knowledge around social media marketing? No. But they have positioned themselves in such a way using their content marketing that the AI is referencing them as an expert. So think about that today. Your job as a brand manager is to think about, how do I get into these AI systems? How do I influence the AI systems to talk about me and my brand? If I do a search for cloud storage, and it'll come up and it'll cite Google and Amazon. Well, if I'm Microsoft or any other company that does cloud storage, I want to be in that too. I want my brand to be included in the results for a question about or a search about cloud storage. But in the future, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with these AI agents and the people that control them? Will Microsoft eventually take Copilot and say, okay, HubSpot, social media marketing, right now it's all about you, but hey, Sprinkler, you're out here too selling social media marketing software. Maybe you pay a little bit and we give you a sponsored result within an AI system. And then does that get disclosed? So really, we're putting an incredible amount of trust in this AI future world that I envision in the companies that provide that arbiter. That could extend not just to marketing and advertising, but to things like politics, to things like the very nature of truth. You're now trusting, and this is where I get worried about big companies and controlling too much of the AI. If you have a question about vaccines, is the person who runs the company that runs the AI that you're asking, are they a crazy anti-vax person? If so, you might get a batshit crazy response, and you might get something that could potentially lead you to harm yourself. Or they might be just like accusations about the AI-powered algorithms that control social media. They could be trying to steer your thinking in one way or the other. So transparency, regulation, multinational cooperation, that's why I go back to these themes as what's going to protect our society in an AI world.
Brian, you're a wise man, but it's been an incredible pleasure to have you on. You are full of wisdom, so I can't wait to get back to you and see where we are a bit in the future. It's going to happen quite quickly if we're reading the tea leaves right here with AI and technology. Before we part ways, Brian, I wanted to ask you, give us some good recommendations. What music, what podcasts, audiobooks, or YouTubers are you watching or listening to these days? If we can get some little recommendations from you.
Sure. Let's see here. For books, 2 books on AI that I'd recommend. The first one is called The Alignment Problem. And the alignment problem gets into a lot of what we were just talking about how do you design machines that serve humans and reflect human values. Because once you start talking about that, you then have to figure out, what are human values? Who decides what the human values are that the machines get into? So again, it gets back to a lot of philosophy. Another book that I'm just starting to read is called Deep Utopia. And that's by a guy named Nick Bostrom, who wrote the brilliant book Superintelligence. Mm-hmm. I liked Superintelligence. It's a little math heavy for me. I got into communications and marketing because I don't love math. Yeah, don't tell my colleague who runs our.
Right, I'm laughing because we're very much we're very much the same. I started that book and like that was dense. That was very dense for me as well.
So superintelligence was tough, but good. I've found Deep Utopia so far to be a little bit lighter, but Deep Utopia really imagines this future of how do we exist in a solved world? Once we use AI to solve all the world's problems, what becomes of the rest of us? And like that's the kind of stuff, like the hair on the back of my neck stands up because I think about what an exciting time it is and how lucky we are to be alive right now to see this change happen.
Fascinating. That's a great. Let's get those links in the show notes.
Definitely.
All right, last question, Brian. This is what I'm really curious about because I love this question to ask everyone really. If you would give advice to the generation now who are graduating high school this year or getting into college and they want to follow your career path, what advice would you give them? The world will be vastly different when they're getting out of college and stepping into the world of work. What would you have them prioritize during their college years?
The one thing that I always think about, and the piece of advice that I give to every young person who asks, is the same, which is look for a way to make yourself unique. That if you are an accountant, you're going to be compared to every other accountant. If you're a developer, you're going to be compared to every other developer. If you are an account manager at an agency, you're always going to be compared to every other account manager. I've been really intentional throughout my career of trying to make myself in a job class of one, whether that was the one website usability specialist at Golin, at Whirlpool, or if I was the one specialist in social media customer care at Golin, to now being the one AI champion at Axicom. It's about how can you make yourself unique and bring some value that people can perceive as something that nobody else is bringing to the organization. And if you do that, then you get out of a place where they're comparing you to other people and they're only looking at you. So that's my piece of advice to everybody is try to think about something that's going to make you unique in whatever you do.
Amazing. Brian, I'm going to go tell my kids that right away. They're only 9 and 12, but that's the path I'm going to get them on.
And what are your kids doing on the farm right now?
One is doing art with the paintbrushes. She's making a sign for a little pond that we have outside the house with a lot of frogs in it. So it's called Frog Pond.
Frog Pond? Yeah.
My son is playing with a rocket that he got for his birthday, which is really fun. It's a little propelled rocker, and actually it goes very far up, and then it comes down in a little parachute. This has been a pleasure. You are such a sport for doing this, and we couldn't be more grateful.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. Congratulations on the launch of your podcast, and I'm excited about Wondercraft. So talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching and listening to Makes You Wonder. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a solid and hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. For extra karma, please share with your mom and your friends too. Makes You Wonder is made with love by Wondercraft, the AI audio studio for brands and creative teams. It's hosted by Oskar Snyder. You can find Oskar on LinkedIn, X, and Threads. Links in show notes. This episode was produced by Alex Hughes Morgan. It was edited by Zaina. A nice young man named Dimitri from Wondercraft was the executive producer. Learn more about Wondercraft at wondercraft.ai.